It never fails. Every time he hits that button, everything that silence.
This is a friend of the township.
Very.
That's pretty recorded.
Once you.
All right, now that everyone's seated, I'd like to call this meeting to order, and we all get to stand up and do the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Yep, Michael Behrman,
Present.
Jamie Melky,
Here.
Kathy Macho,
Here.
Nancy Rondell,
Here.
and Matt Bugira.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Great. Citizens comment, if you'd like to speak to the council about anything that's not on our agenda tonight, this is your opportunity. You know the rules.
I just wanted to throw an idea at you guys. Mary Jane is done down at the launching ramp where she's been for, I don't know, 40 years. And maybe we could get a sign and say the Mary Jane Kiowa ramp or whatever. We at the park already has a name, but maybe we could do that before her dementia gets so bad she won't understand anyhow.
Right.
So it's kind of a time thing, and that's what I have to say.
Nice idea.
This was brought up at the Harbor Commission and we're looking into it.
Okay.
Thanks, Tom.
Anyone else? Good. No hands raised on the computer. No? Guess we'll jump right into the consent agenda. Any issues?
I didn't see anything.
Motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept, well, can I do both of them?
Yeah.
June
Do you
17th.
think they're corrected?
Oh, yeah.
Did you correct something?
Councilman Behrman had found a couple things that I had wrong on the minute, so I corrected those for the current, for the long time record.
Can I do them together?
Mhm.
Make a motion that we accept the June 17th and the June 21st minutes as corrected.
And the bills.
And the bills, so I, the consent agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Go.
First item on the agenda is Chief Knight will present the life-saving awards to Marty McGregor and Mike Gary for their actions on May 22nd. So Chief Knight would like me to play a video.
Yeah, I'd like to start with a video tonight, and this will sort of portray what the award's about. This is the dash, or excuse me, the body camera from Officer Josh Johnson. Well, that's the first part, and I just want to show you sort of the part of the. So we know the outcome now, but when you watch that, and I wasn't there. There we go. But this doesn't happen without two people. And so with that being said, I just want to read, I'm giving Marty and Mark, or Marty and Mike a life-saving award. And this is what it says. Citizens Life-Saving Award for exceptionally meritorious service in saving life. We proudly present Marty McGregor and Mike Gary with a certificate of recognition for your outstanding performance. On the 22nd of May, 2024, at 7:02, the American Legion Post 281 Mobile Corps was practicing for the Memorial Day Parade in Harbor Springs on 3rd Street when one of the members, Paul Bianchi, collapsed and fell to the ground. Immediately, Marty McGregor and Mike Geary assessed Bianchi and realized he was not responsive and didn't have a pulse. They started CPR until Officer Josh Johnson arrived with an AED. The AED was hooked up to Bianchi and advised to administer shocks. Shocks were provided and CPR continued until Emmett County EMS arrived. Off-duty officer Tyler Swiss arrived and assisted with CPR. After a period of time, Bianchi regained a pulse and was then transported to McLaren Northern Michigan Hospital. Paul Bianchi has made a full recovery. If Marty McGregor and Mike Geary had not provided immediately aid to Paul Bianchi, he would not have survived this heart attack. Therefore, it is with pleasure to present both Marty and Mike the Distinguished Life Saving Award on this 15th day of July, 2024. Great job. We want to hear it. Got out to Officer Tyler Swiss. You notice he was off duty, responded, and off duty to help assist with this. So this will be a sad story for you guys. And I've talked to plenty of people at the Legion and they all say the same thing. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And no, thanks. Good job. I'd like you to officially. And maybe you guys stand right out here somewhere. We can, visual take a picture. Hey, Paul, do you mind being with them? This is amazing, folks. It's like our AEDs and the work they did right off the bat. It all, here we stand today.
Guaranteed. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I have to say, watching that is a little disconcerting. Seeing yourself laying in the middle of the street. And then I started thinking, taking myself out of the equation, and I saw professional guys step up. Ronald Reagan had a saying about the Marine Corps that some people go through the whole life and wonder if they ever make a difference. He said the Marines don't have that problem. Our first responders in this community fit that category. They make a difference. I'm living proof of this. Thank you very much. As you know, I wouldn't be here. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, unless you want to stick around for the rest of the meeting.
Just on a quick note, I've known both of these guys my entire adult life and done some. They've saved me a couple of times.
Everybody.
Hi, boys.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you.
Very pleased. Thanks for coming. Never seen the other end. It's crazy. Yeah, it is. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Thank you. Like I said with Tyler, it's like, and I could have shown more. Tyler Swiss came off duty. Tyler Hoff showed up shortly thereafter off duty too. So like our communities, our officers are committed and like they both showed up not working. Josh was the one working. So, but those two guys, we'd be having a different story if it wasn't for them. So thanks for letting me do this.
All right, so to bring the mood down. Master bid, building bids review. So we received 2 bids for the Harbor Master building renovation project. We received one from Gordon Construction Services and one from Power Construction Group. You see the prices there, 1.97 million from Gordon and $2.53 million from Power Construction Group. So in our CIP, we noted the project would be $600,000 plus. That plus was there for a few reasons. One was being that we really had no idea how much it was going to cost. Our estimates were old. We don't know didn't know exactly what the project entailed, but also that $600,000 was based on how much the city anticipated it wanted to or could potentially spend from the waterfront fund, right? $600,000. We have about $900-something thousand in there. We'd like to have a slush fund for emergencies, so $600,000 was kind of that number. But we kind of knew as we started working on through the project, getting closer to the project, that I was going to cost more than that, probably up to $1 million. But we had did not think it was gonna cost this high. We were kind of surprised by the bids, and there's probably a few reasons for that. One of them, we did extend the bidding period because we had several interested bidders, but they could just not get enough subcontractors to bid on time, to meet the deadline. So that was one of the things. Another thing was probably that construction costs have increased since we first put this, these estimates together, a couple years ago. And finally, there are some elements that are in there beyond what the original scope was. And what I mean by the original scope was, we just had this idea, all we need to do is put the bathrooms on the west side and then rearrange the laundromat, the current bathrooms in the laundromat. But there also was other things that needed to happen, like plumbing, mechanicals, that we just weren't really factored into some of those costs. So that's part of it. There's also, of course, some of the materials that we picked, weren't, low end, materials that were going there, like the tiles and other parts of the product. So those things kind of added up. And I think one of the biggest ones is that costs have gone up, and we had just a couple bidders on the project. And it was kind of really close to when we had the project start date and when the bidding period ended. So, companies only had a couple months to prepare to do construction. So that's that. So we do have, at least we kind of have an idea of where some companies are at for some of their line items. I think we have 4 options. The city has 4 options. One is just to scratch the project altogether. The other is to select a contractor and then borrow or bond to complete the project. The third one could be to negotiate with one or both of the bidders to try to bring that price target down. Or we could revise the project, scale it back, rebid the project in the winter for a longer bid period, and for a fall 2025 construction start date. Even with point number 4, we could also have some sort of, won't call it maybe a subcommittee, perhaps, where we have a council member and or a harbor commission member join staff and the architect to kind of narrow down what needs to be there. But we did, and as Mark knows, we sat down with the harbor commission chair, kind of working on this project at the time, and we got that input, but we didn't have a council member on that as well. So it could be one possibility, or you could just leave it to staff and Mark to bring it back down to what you guys want to see. I mean, Mark would tell you probably that if you say, we want, a project that costs this much money, it's still kind of hard to figure out, what we put together. Will the bid be higher than that or lower than that? It's kind of really hard to have a price target, but now that we know where some of the things costs are, we can bring that number down from $1.9 million if we revise it. So I think at least revising the specs and looking in more detail at where some of the extra costs were, as you saw kind of in Mark's letter of some of the breakdown of the costs, kind of helps us get a better sense of what we could potentially bring down. And at the Harbor Commission meeting last Wednesday, they do support scaling it back as much as possible. So as I mentioned, the waterfront is projected to have about $950,000 at the end of 2024. General fund is expected to have $2.8 million, with $150,000 of that reserved for capital improvements projects. And you remember with a new fund balance policy that we passed last year, which we strive to have 9 months in our operating general fund balance. So in case of an emergency, we can deliver basic services, and then we set up a capital improvements fund for maintenance and new capital projects that we're gonna start saving money toward. Of course, this is a waterfront fund project. Doesn't mean that council can't use general funds for it, because there's public bathrooms there, but there really wasn't the idea that the majority of this project would be through general fund. When we first started talking about this, the idea was that most of the funding would come from the waterfront fund. But if needed, we would supply it with supplement it with some general fund money. So that's where we're at. And as I said, my recommendation is to revise the project, scale it back. Mark is here too, if do you want to add anything, or just want to?
No, you covered it very well. It was, since COVID, things have been, some things have settled down, others have not. If you notice the plumbing number, the plumbing and mechanical numbers, one is quite high, but, for a lot of reasons. That's one of the trades, plumbers especially, where they are still getting super premium dollar right now. And so a lot of subs are hesitant to bid projects. And I was told by both
both bidders we had did a very good job. They put time into it, they asked really good questions. So I thought it was very effective. And that's sort of the reality of what was designed. So in order to reduce the cost, I think it's pretty straightforward to value engineer this. But what I want to make sure we do is create a good scope of work, which, clear about how much are we trying to shave off? And then we can do some effective value engineering and rebid. And this time, the new status, for a while there, bidders didn't want to have too much lead time before a project would start because prices would change. But things have settled down enough now that we're going back to the old mode where they'd like to get the job and know they've got 6 months to get all their ducks in a row before they put a shovel in the ground. And I was told by a couple contractors who did not bid this time that that's what they would prefer, and then they'd be very interested in bidding. So I'm very confident the price can come down significantly.
Do you have some thoughts about what can be scaled back? I mean, we're talking
Sure.
very significantly.
Yeah, well, tile, for instance, I expect a very nice tile. And there's a lot of it, especially when we get into the, redoing the voters' bathroom and shower rooms. There's a lot of square footage of tile. Another one is plumbing fixtures. Plumbing fixtures are still sky high, labor sky high, and we're redoing, the original and the new. There's a lot of plumbing fixtures in there. And it all adds up. We have painted wood ceilings. Adds up. Skylights were a pretty big ticket items. We could reduce those. So there's actually quite a bit. And we designed it so it'd be a very nice building for Harbor Springs, but it came with a very nice price. So, but it can absolutely be adjusted. Very confident about that.
Mark, a question about, because this was brought up, I believe, about the roof being, is that necessary in your point to kind of change that?
Yeah, it
roof?
really is in order to get the, all the mechanicals where they have to go, because right now it's a building slab on grade. I think it is essential. And that actually wasn't that much because the one bid in there was like $136,000 or something like that. And that was for the removal and installation of the new roof.
Yeah, this one was 67,000.
I'm sorry.
The low bidder was 67,000.
Yeah, so that wasn't a big price driver. But again, it's going to depend on the specifications, and we can also loosen up the specifications a little bit too, so it makes it a little bit easier for bidders, because it was pretty tight. So
Was the reason for the new roof because we're moving, the plumbing around, or was there another reason?
well, in order for the building to have proper HVAC, conditioning of the air, both warming and cooling, required that.
Okay,
Because you just can't, there's no place to run ductwork.
okay.
I know, because everything's too low, we don't want the building to get any higher. And so that was the reason why that old roof had to come off. And I would suggest also, and also if we want to bring light inside the building, so that we had brought in skylights. And that would be very hard to retrofit in, and there would be leak problems. And we want to do those right from the very beginning. The other issue is that there's enough work being done on this building that, it kicks into the Michigan the building code, commercial code. And I believe the R value requirements, if you just have the ceiling is like an R60 now, whereas you have insulation above the roofing deck, it's only an R30 requirement. And that makes a big difference in price and height that it would have to be. So there's actually a lot of reasons to take that roof off and put a new one on.
You're thinking the redesign though would incorporate some of the same concepts of moving the bathrooms on
Yeah,
the
the plan's
side?
not gonna change.
Okay,
The plan is the same, unless you want it to, but, what I'm talking about is reducing the quality of materials, maybe eliminating some elements like the skylights, and just, bringing it back into line, and also getting, working again competitive bids and going through a longer process, because that's what contractors want now. Instead of, for a while there, they could guarantee price more in 30 days. And so that really shortened up the bid period to construction period. Now it's lengthened out back to about 6 months.
You know, we want quality materials and stuff because it's a public bathroom and, you know. But there's durable doesn't necessarily mean, you know, we need good, durable, quality materials because I'm sure it, you know, it's a public facility. It takes a, you know, a good
Meeting.
for lack of a better word, beating, yeah. But yet, so you can't script so much so that, you know, plumbing fixtures and faucets are breaking, you know, right?
And if we sit down and maybe have, you know, some conversations, we can talk about whether or not like the boaters bathrooms, like do those need the same kind of upgrades as the new bathrooms will have? So like those kinds of questions, we can look at those things that, you know, weren't, again, part of the original scope, but the idea was while we're putting in new bathrooms, then you have, you know, why upgrade the boaters bathrooms? Because, you know, they've been there for decades unimproved. But the other idea was if, you know, some of these things are gonna have to happen in the future, whether it's 10, 15, 20 years from now, and then it makes more sense to do it all at once, but obviously the costs kind of prevent that.
It had project creep, the scope expanded. And then once you get outside the building, you know, we did a lot that I don't think was considered, you know, when we're just adding a couple of bathrooms on. There's a lot of site work that has to be done. You have to get to sanitary, you have to get to water, you have to get to storm sewers, asphalt cutting, curb cutting, a lot of concrete, you know, to put that walk in so the trucks can drive on it. It's a lot of concrete.
But those things can't be, I mean, you gotta do those structural things. Those are the things that can't be
Those are pretty much fixed.
eliminated, yeah.
Those are pretty much fixed.
so-
The site costs are, but the way they can be adjusted is if we get some more competitive. Then we'd know a little bit more,
So we're pushing the start date out a year,
yes.
basically is what we're.
Yeah, the goal would be is to bid it,
Yeah.
like, in this coming spring at the latest, so they have a full 6 months before they start construction or more, before they start. Which I'm surprised to hear, because evidently contractors feel good enough about the stability of the, you know, supply lines that they'll go out that far, you know, with a fixed price.
When did we put it out to bid?
It's not till
Yes.
May.
It was late May, I think.
Late May,
We had it, then we extended
We
the bid.
lost a little bit of time to each other for certain reasons.
So we would try to get it out like February, March.
Yeah, or even to say about the end of the year. It won't take long to do this work, to redo the specifications and simplify things and eliminate certain things, if that's what decided you might want to do. If we can look at, you know, we have all the lighting in there, we have some LED lighting around the skylights and a bunch of stuff that I think will just go away. And that will bring down the cost.
And do I understand that part of this process, and even with the people that did bid already, is that they were aware of that there might be cost constraints and that they are looking at ways to save money or ways
No,
to
not
do
in
things
the
different?
bid. We had 4 alternates that we built into the bid. And
Okay,
one of them addressed each one, the other one didn't have time to get some of those numbers.
okay,
So we did build in some alternates that were mostly deductive. You know, instead of an ad, so it costs less, but it still doesn't get us in the ballpark of where y'all want to be.
Yeah.
So essentially, we just have to redo the spec, reduce some materials, be a little more judicious of how much we're actually doing, just sort of pull it back in a bit. And I think, and then get, you know, a good bid process. And the first one was good. I mean, both bidders did a really good job. You know, they were, you know, asked good questions, they put work into it. And if you wanted to sit down and negotiate with either one of them, it'd be hard to do because they sort of both tied up there on the staff evaluation bid score. So, but they both did a very good job, and I hope they bid again.
I think number 4 makes sense.
Yeah.
And I certainly would use a committee involving the harbor commission. And one council, it just would save time in the long run, I think.
I guess is there a council member that can want to be on it?
Involved, that would make sense.
We do have Kathy, you are on the harbor commission. I don't know if it makes sense for you to be on it, but.
I'm not sure that in terms of. I may not be the best person, but in terms of knowledge of the needs of the building. But I guess my question is, how does this come back from the architect to the council, or is it gonna go back through the harbor commission?
Well, I guess we could scale it back as at a level, when we scale it back, we bring it back to the council. If you want to go from the harbor commission, it probably makes sense, but to go to them first, just to see what the new project looks like, but essentially it's staying the same, not much is changing.
But I guess my concern is that the harbor commission is comfortable with exactly what it is, because there was some discussion at the last harbor commission meeting as to whether the project got bigger than they were anticipating. And so wouldn't want to be speaking for the harbor commission in any way and saying, yeah, we need this, we don't need that. This is where I'm coming from.
That's why I think if I may, that's why I think having some kind of work group or something like that is important, where the scope of work can be defined. Because certain things were added for very good reasons that maybe some just didn't agree with, but they're there for a reason.
Right.
Maybe some things weren't. So I think that's the key to the next go around, is that everybody has solidarity on the scope of work and what we're going, what's acceptable. You know, because.
You don't want to have to do this 3 more times.
No.
Yeah.
We do
No.
one more.
We want to do
And I guess on top of that question also comes, and this is where Nick, you're forecasting here, how much money, can we realistically spend on this project? We have what's in the waterfront fund, and I guess part of that question is how much the council is also willing to give from the general fund, unless they want to borrow money.
Right, that really is it in a nutshell. I'd like to see 300 grand in the waterfront fund, because one dock, something happens, even though it could potentially be covered by insurance. You can drop $300,000 on a dock real quick. So they've always tried to maintain that cushion for that, plus, and then just operating expenses throughout the year before we get revenues in the summer. I don't know. I mean, I guess a lot will depend on how this summer goes and what revenues and where we end up at the end of 24. And that 600 grand could be 850, And then if we're back up in the $1.2 million, $1.3 million range, then that'd be a discussion for council. Do we want to talk about general fund dollars? Or, fire authority just bought a fire truck. They financed it through the bank rather than doing bonds. And actually got a pretty good situation out of it, but. I'm not a big fan of borrowing unless you absolutely have to, but we've been talking about this for 25 years.
Well, as my sense from the harbor commission was that the total cost was a shocker. And so I think everybody is going to be willing to come to the table to really get this down to a number that everybody can swallow.
Or half the money to even do it, but, and I think Mark spoke to it well, that I think with this very short time frame from May to now, basically 2 months of bidding time, there's contractors out there that will be much more competitive and do just as good a job. Not that these guys wouldn't.
Right.
But when you've got a time frame and don't know what's gonna happen between now and then, I would personally put a little bit higher tag on stuff,
So
just to cover.
the way it worked out, if I deducted, estimate some site costs and things like that. The building's 2,700 square feet. We range from almost $900 a square foot to $730 a square foot. And if you get down to say $500 a square foot, I mean, that's still 1.3
Right.
Okay.
back to life. So that's
And that's
how the
about-
basic numbers work.
Right. And I don't ever see that 500 coming down much lower than that, and we'd be lucky to get to that probably.
Yeah, well, some contractors say that's possible, but it's gonna be dependent on what, if there's a hard number, then the scope of work has to reflect that. And then the design maybe does change it, actually, because that's severe. But if a $500 a square foot, you know, that's, we can hope for that and keep our fingers crossed, but this could be a hope.
Send it back, rework it, see what we can shave off. If we need a committee, do we need a committee?
Oh, a work group.
I think it's really important that Harbor Commission weighs in from the very beginning.
Yeah,
I was at the Harbor Commission meeting, and I think that's just a really important element. If we're gonna do this again, or if Mark's gonna do this again, I think Harbor Commission definitely needs to be involved again from the beginning.
right.
And it would be good, I think, probably, I mean, it might save time if a council person was in on understanding how it was getting worked.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine to be the council representative, if that's what you want.
But,
I think you're on the commission,
So,
so it makes sense.
right,
But I do think you need to pull somebody else from the commission to also be.
Oh, yes, yes,
Not just.
for sure,
For sure.
Yeah.
for sure.
and I'm sure JB.
And I think it should
will wanna
be,
involved.
in all honesty, yeah. Or someone, yeah, I think that would be wise.
That's great.
All right, thanks for trying.
It'll work.
We're getting it.
Yeah, it'll work.
Thanks, Mark. Okay. Next topic is a substation project update. So we have been making steady progress with finalizing the substation and transmission line location details. So we have, our engineers have determined exactly how much land we need for the property owners who are here, David Everett and Kevin Kelleher. Where the substation would actually sit on the property, the transmission and distribution line paths, identifying the necessary easements that we would need and the necessary steps for the planning commission approval. Because remember, this is gonna go to Little Traverse Township for planning commission. And after discussion with the property owners, they also have two requests that they wanted council to consider. One was, instead of donating land, they would like to sell it for $30,000 to cover legal fees and vegetative screening on their property. And then they are asking also the council not to annex their property any time in the future if that ever came up. When it comes to revised cost estimates, we have an estimated total of $6,621,000. That's up about $223,000 from our original estimate, but that's due to the transformer cost. Actually, if you take out that additional transformer cost, when Michael redid some things with the design, for example, instead of doing boring, we're gonna do some more open trench, which saves money. And we're also kind of redistributing the lines on Everett's property to make it a little more sense for him and for the city, the way the transmission lines go through. That shaved off about $37,000. So really, if it wasn't for the transformer, the cost would be slightly of the project, that cost estimate is slightly lower than anticipated. Of course, we do have, fees that we have paid to date and also future fees that we have to consider. Purchasing the property, legal fees for drafting, reviewing easements, and engineering surveying to date. And so those costs estimate to be around $60,000. Could be more or less, but that's where we're at. So really, the project costs estimates haven't really changed significantly except for the cost of the transformer, which we discussed when we purchased the transformer. We had a couple bids for the transformer and we picked the bid for that one. So the next steps is we hope to have the agreements finalized, then prepare bid documents. Once we get the bid documents, Clerk Whitaker and Nicker will begin securing a bond, and once the contractor is selected for a project, then the bond will be issued. That's just a general scope of how this timeline will work. Like I said, David and Kathy are here to answer questions, especially if you have questions about their two requests. And they also had other requests, and we talked about different things when we met with them, and we've negotiated that. But these are really the two outstanding requests they have left. You can ask them questions, and my recommendation, Jim's recommendation, would be go into closed session probably just to talk about this because it's a real estate deal and discuss it amongst yourselves, and then if you want to, you don't have to go to closed session, but that's the recommendation. I don't know,
Any public comment? Yeah, I say
Closed session.
closed session.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I wonder, do they have anything? that
no, if they,
would like
yeah,
to say or-
because they do have two requests.
Yeah, as far as the second point, the annexation, I think that's mostly a moot point. That's not likely to happen. So we can discuss it, but I think it's a fairly distant possibility. In speaking with the township. And the reason for, one of the main reasons for selling the property is that the tax situation that we anticipated of being able to donate it and recover some value from it is not realistic, because a donation to a city has to be for something that's for everyone to use, like a city park. That is a legitimate donation. And then if you back out that from the equation and say, we were audited 4 years, we don't want to get into a situation where we're audited in 4 years and try and defend a donation, because it's super expensive to go through an audit. And that would complicate our life at a time that we don't want to complicate it. So I hope you understand that. And we'll go at the very minimal end of the value of the property, so that I think the city came up with that it was worth 40 to 70. And so we're at 30, and I think that's reasonable. We should be able to reduce some of the costs of the building itself by doing the vegetative screening on our property, so that it can be, the space can be more efficiently utilized that you're gonna get. Other things to consider from the engineering point of view is that we were able to shift the grade of the facility down about 4 feet, use that land that we excavate out of that fill dirt, to fill another section to create optionality in the future and better drainage. So the system, in speaking with Michael, we had a long and detailed excursion around the property, trying to find and tune the situation to the best possible scenario for everyone, including neighbors that are very generously cooperating with us, which doesn't often happen in a situation like this. Usually you have a lot of pushback. And fortunately, the neighbors that would be most affected are very pleased with the open communication, the trees that we're putting in, the way that we're going to screen it, and how we're approaching it. So we're in very good shape as far as being able to do it without a lot of animosity and pushback, which I think is very important in a situation like this in today's political climate. One of the massive things that this project does is it reduces fire hazard for the entire community. As time has gone on, the telephone poles that are in there are about 30 feet lower than the canopy of the trees. Those poles are dated at about 55 years right now, and they have to be replaced anyhow. With a 46 kW pole, it goes 12 feet taller. That's not enough to get above the trees. You've got a 30-foot easement and trees 15 feet away from it that are ostensibly going to be 20 feet taller than the power lines. Eventually it's going to be dry. We're going to have a fire, and getting these things underground is the smart and safe thing to do.
Verbiage to go on to closed session, or do we have anything else on the agenda?
We have, but it's also closed
Yeah.
session. But you probably want to go to closed session, then go back into open session after this one. And if there's a decision that you made, you probably want to, or a decision you want to make in open session, you can do that or not. And then you go back into closed session.
I move that we go into closed session to.
Jim's gotta give you the verbiage.
Yes. That's what he's there for.
I move.
We get, you
I
got that
move
right
that
right on there.
Councilperson German should move that the council meet in closed session under section 8D of the Michigan Open Meetings Act to consider the purchase or lease of real property up to the time an option to purchase or lease that real property is obtained.
I move that we go into closed session for the purposes of that Mr. Ranger just read.
And I'll second it.
All in favor?
Yeah.
Opposed?
Closed section at
We
And
have
that's-
that.
All right, I'll let,
I'm sorry, did I, whatever.
we're back on,
Yay,
we're back
nay.
on.
Were we?
We're back.
We're back.
Were we? Okay. Got it.
Okay, this is the crowd.
Where's the executioner stand?
We lost a bunch of them.
Everybody's gone. I'll sit in the front row.
What you guys do?
Like a geek.
Like cars.
Shoot everybody
Yeah,
away.
deck of cards.
See anybody else?
All right,
All right,
so, Mayor.
yeah, we've discussed your proposals and the annexation portion, we can't, agree to say we'll never, annex the property. We don't have any interest in annexing it at this time, but you never know what's gonna happen in 10 or 20 years, whatever, so. And then we'll, let you negotiate with Victor on the final, process of the purchase of the property. The vegetative screening, I guess, those are the two things. And see if we can put this deal together as quick as possible and get it done.
Perfect.
We'll be in touch soon to
Yeah.
just talk about that.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
Thanks for your patience down the hallway.
Thank you.
We made it work. Thank all of you.
Thank you.
Victor, I'm zipping out of town for a day or two.
What's that?
It'll be next week, like.
Okay. we'll do that next. All right, and before we go into closed session for the second time, go. I'm gonna just go through the city manager's report, because there's just a few updates. All right, we are seeking proposals for the Kiwanis Park renovation design through July 25th, and actually the Harbor Master building bid process kind of helped us narrow in on what potential costs could be, because we're talking about redoing bathrooms there and other things. So, that's,
But
Yeah.
height is less of an issue there.
it is less of an issue, yes.
Second story, man.
Right, yeah, it wouldn't, no, we're not gonna run into the same issues, but it's definitely, the building though is a 1970s building, so there
Yeah.
could be, there's modern
Same
codes,
issues.
building code standards to follow, those are where the costs are gonna come in more so than a playground or something, like Kiwanis Park. I did talk to the Harbor Springs Library in town, and they agreed to have physical copies of our newsletter at the libraries once a month. There's another place to distribute us. We, listening to feedback that we, do too much stuff on the website and digitally and not enough in person, so we're trying to do more physical copies. Alley inventory, that's been going actually really great. Lucas and I have made a lot of progress. I mean, Lucas did most of the actual alley process, but I did reach out, send a letter to all that I believe all, there could be some that we missed, but people who live or butt next to an alley, asking for their feedback on how they use the alleys and how they want it to be used. And Lucas has been taking pictures of each of the alleys, showing their conditions. We've been also digging into the history of how those alleys came to be paved, or there's a lot there. Actually, Fred Guder did have an alley inventory several decades ago. It wasn't a detailed one, but it was a cost of improvement, so that was a good start, so.
I'll look for my letter.
Oh, did you get one? I don't know if you got
Well, you have an alley?
one. Yeah.
Ooh.
Well, I sent out like 70, so if I missed you, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
We are looking into microphones for council chambers. I would be microphones so the people in the audience can hear. The problem is I'm still speaking with the same vendor or the contractor that installed it the second time. We used one, well, I don't think none of you were on board except for Matt when we did it. The first time, that business went out of business. So we had to go to a second business called AVI, and they were downstate. We had 3 bids. They were the best bid. So instead of going to a third vendor to have three different, because that second vendor came in, they're like, well, this first vendor didn't do this right, this right, this right. So they built on top of that vendor, so then we have a third vendor coming in, and then they're gonna, it's just gonna, you know, so I'm trying to work with them, and they're downstate, so I'm gonna have a meeting with them tomorrow, a Zoom meeting or Teams meeting. Hopefully, they have some updates for me, and so hopefully I can get something. It's just, it's gonna be a little tricky to configure with streaming on Zoom, so there's no feedback. When the microphone that's playing in here is being picked up by people that are listening on Zoom. So it's hard because when both companies the first company that installed this system and the second company that installed the addition to the system, both said that they didn't recommend putting microphones in here because the room is small. They believe the room was small to have a microphone in here for people in the audience and speakers to hear. There might be other, obviously, we've heard otherwise from a lot of residents, so
Just,
there might be other ways to increase this, sound here, but that will be costly. So we're gonna go with this method first and see if there's a solution.
You can't just use like a microphone. You can't just use like a portable microphone. I don't know if that would.
You'd have to set up tied into either the speakers we have here or have another speaker here, and then there's usually feedback
Would there be
issues. Yeah,
feedback?
There's potentially feedback issues that,
yeah, I
that picking up.
understand
Yeah, and that's the technical stuff that I don't understand, which, it seems it's like possible, but we wanna make sure that we don't have, people on Zoom that start complaining like, we can't hear anything.
You could use megaphones.
Megaphones.
We really could use megaphones.
Huh?
used.
Yes, we could use microphones,
could use
Nancy.
megaphones.
Jamie.
Yes,
Quiet.
megaphones.
Or we can just yell.
Or we could, yeah.
I can't hear you.
Yes. It's hard to hear there, and I know I have a bit of a hearing issue, but it's hard to hear.
And it's also partly because of the way the desks
The room
are
is
faced, and
configured.
you, council, you're talking to each other, they're not necessarily talking to people in the audience, so when you're speaking to each other, your sound is traveling to the person necessarily and not that person back there, so hopefully the microphones, we can figure that out, so, but anyway, just update there.
Good.
Let's see, as far as the board meetings, a lot of board meetings in June. Bluff Stability Committee is meeting this Wednesday, and they're putting together some best practice guidelines, and could probably have a public informational meeting or a public meeting to take any input from residents, and then hopefully in September, October, have something to present to council as far as guidelines and recommendations. Planning Commission was again talking short-term rentals, signage, coastal resiliency. For those of you that might have missed it, a third of downtown, well, half of downtown and like a good 1/4 of the city could be underwater if the water levels are just right, and then we have a once in 100-year storm that hits it. So yeah, there's a lot more risk to flooding. Glen Drive, a lot of those properties would all be under this new flood, so yeah. And yeah, so the Harbor Commission met and agreed to explore again, making minor tweaks to Ford Park, and also those minor tweaks are potentially widening the driveway, circular drive on Ford Park, potentially extending some of the trailer parking spots, making them a little longer.
Yeah.
So Lucas is getting cost estimates for those. And as far as other meetings I had, just a couple, MPPA meeting, MMEA meeting, on advanced metering infrastructure, as AMI, we have that in our actually our CIP plan. We got to get over these hurdles, and that's something we also have to talk about when it comes to bonding. Potentially, do we want to bond other electric projects into this as well, to pay for some of them, because we do have a lot on our electric. There's a lot of upgrades that need to happen in our electric system. And CC 911 regular meeting, they have, I believe, hired or made an offer for a new executive director. So I think we're just finalizing those at our meeting Wednesday, that deal for a new director of CC 911. Yeah, any questions about what's been going on?
Yeah. Don't think so.
All right, so then we can go to the item 3E, which is once I get there.
Oh, so now we have to go back into close.
Yeah, we'll have to go back and close session. This is for Potter City versus City Harbor Springs lawsuit. Back in April, I think Potter filed another lawsuit with basically the same claims, but there's some differences to them, but essentially the same claims and same. But we didn't get served until June sometime, so there was no reason to act on anything because someone could file a claim, but if we're not served, doesn't mean it's, but we got served in June, so about 2.5 months after. So now, I think we need to discuss steps going forward and the case.
So that's what we need to close meeting.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Jim will provide that language as well.
Thank you.
Once again, we would need a motion that the council meet in closed session under section 8E of the Michigan Open Meetings Act to consult with the city attorney regarding trial or settlement strategy in connection with the pending Potter litigation on the ground that an open meeting would have a detrimental effect on the litigating or settlement strategy of the city.
I'll make said motion.
Again.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now, you do need a roll call on this one.
Kathy Marshall,
Yes.
Michael Behrman,
Yes.
Matt O'Gara,
Yes.
Nancy Rundell,
Yes.
and Jamie McKee.
Yes.